Good evening and welcome to the Middle East Teaching and Learning Conference. I am Dr. Aisha Shamsi from the Higher Colleges of Technology, and I will be with you for about, let's say, 30 to 40 minutes to discuss a critical area in the Emirati education system. Before that, let me tell you something. You can feel free to write your questions and post them. I will be able to answer all of your questions, if not during the Q&A. Um, Couple of minutes I can provide. So I will try my best also to follow up with the chat questions. Okay, so bilingualism and biliteracy is a main area of my research interest. And let me say, this interest is based on or because of some reasons, like being a mother, an Emirati educator who worked in education system or Emirati education system, taught. I was educational leader and then moved to the higher education. So I realized the importance of exploring more about this topic. So as I mentioned, I taught in one of the high schools. I worked as a lead cluster manager and a school principal. And I realized some kind of discrepancies with language development among young Emirati students enrolled in government schools. So my concern actually wasn't about English or Arabic development or teaching or any kind of cultural or identity issues. As a mother and educator, I wanted children in the UAE to achieve academically. And this wasn't possible without the appropriate or sufficient development of English as a language of instruction and Arabic as a language of thought and daily use, in other terms. I read a lot and I researched. And finally, I decided that this is the area, or this was okay. So bilingual education context in the UAE is unique in many aspects. Second language curriculum and programs differ depending on whether they are offered uh, in English or Arabic, or using English as a language of instruction, as a language of co-teaching, or whatever. So the most important thing here, considering English as a language of academic success. policymakers initiated a plan for public schools to promote learning in a bilingual context, such as the UAE. For example, we had previously the new school model, where English was treated or was expected to be a children's first language and a language of instruction. And then we moved, or both main regulatory body in the UAE merged, and we moved to a more standardized system where we expect children to learn, achieve. At the same time, we expect a sufficient and good development in Arabic language. Well, we have many goals, and we hope for the best for our children, especially with the diglossic nature of the Arabic language. So Emirati students or children start their education in KG, or like KG1, where they are taught in English, math, science, and English. This is a previous case. While other subjects are taught maybe in Arabic. However, using English in math and science classes was mandatory. After the merger, and we experienced huge change in KG curriculum and the focus on Arabic as a first language and a language of instruction in the early years. And for many reasons, such as the cognitive, social, many other aspects that we need to focus on. However, the different layers or different, let's say, dialect that children come with when they come to school, plus English, plus the modern standardized Arabic, created some kind of cognitive or overwhelm for our young children. So making students use higher order thinking skills, especially in second language, and especially when transitioning from cycle 1 to cycle 2, they will be facing a lot of cognitively demanding tasks, especially in math and science. They need sufficient development in English. And this is not possible. Here, my focus is on the government sector. Not and the case is different in the government sector. So we want students to be ready cognitively, linguistically, and even socially to use English as a language of instruction and language of the demanding tasks when they move from cycle 1 to cycle 2. So here the UAE seeks higher scores actually in the international assessment like PISA, TEMS, and other international assessment. In order to achieve, we need to have a strong focus to be placed on primary education or cycle 1 education, and the policy, language policy implementation. And from my point of view as well, we need sustainable practice. We need to sustain what we are doing for the benefit of children, parents, and the education system, and the future of this country. So the increasing importance and demand of bilingualism for future growth of children and individuals pave the way to increasing focus on biliteracy, using the languages. And here we say that we want children to use both languages, not just during English and Arabic classes, but also we want them to move from considering them or considering the use of language as a practice. We want, or an event, we want it to be as a practice. We want to sustain what we are doing. So when I focus on my research, considering the different aspects of language development or language teaching, I focus on a critical area or a critical grade level, grade 5, 4, and 5. Here, cycle 2 is considered or seen as a transition, or grade 5 is seen as a transition point between cycle 1 and cycle 2. And main subjects or core subjects in cycle 2 are taught in English. And children need to achieve appropriate proficiency in the second language, because it will be the language of science, math, technology. Grade 5 or grade 4 is a gateway or an exit to more demanding tasks, and the language is an exit ticket to higher education in the UAE. So here, I thought of conducting exploratory, like mixed method research, because I wanted just first to find out the main areas that I need to focus on. I included surveys to students, teachers, parents. I did observations. I did interviews. I focus on bilingualism and biliteracy of primary education students, since their linguistic, cognitive and metacognitive development and socio-cultural aspects at this point are crucial to boosting their subsequent performance in higher education and in international assessment, as mandated by the UAE national agenda. So for the first area, I focused on linguistics aspects of bilingualism and biliteracy. I examined the linguistics aspect of instruction or teaching and learning that help or hinder the development of a student's bilingualism. Of course, here linguistics aspects of the language, like forms, syntax, phonology, semantics, and pragmatics. These are considered as the most critical aspects of language development. We need to make sure that students or children develop up to grade level, up to a second language learner, bilingual learner. And these aspects are fundamental for bilingual children to master at appropriate age and academic stage as well, to ensure success in their subjects. So basically, and from a cognitive point of view, Commons threshold theory and educators wanted to consider the students' level of language development in their first language, to make sure that their second language acquisition can facilitate the cognitive development, which makes sense. This will lead to proficient use of both languages. I understand that Arabic and English are distinct languages, but we can say, and research proved that although languages are distinct, there are specific skills that can be transferred, and this kind of awareness children have for one language, syntax, forms, semantics, or whatever, can be transferred to the other language. So the issue is that the Arabic is semantic language that is different from English as a Germanic language. Let's say, for instance, in their verb system and the sentence structure, there of course, there are differences. Also, the nature of Arabic and the different dialects that child brings to his school can interfere with the proficiency in modern standardized Arabic. Again, we can consider modern standardized Arabic as a second language or a third language for the child, because he comes to school with his home language. There are not that much difference between modern standardized Arabic and the dialect, but again, children still need to learn the modern standardized Arabic. So it's kind of an overwhelm that we bring for our children. So UAE public schools and children in public schools who have developed equal proficiency in both languages, Arabic and English, can process information through both languages, which is the target or the goal. In contrast, those whose Arabic is more developed than English, again, they will be successful, but not as good as those who have equal proficiency in both languages. When English is the language of instruction for the core subjects like math and science, a student's language proficiency can impede or can interfere with their academic performance, which is not fair. We need to equip children with the appropriate language proficiency so that they can achieve and, kind of equity in practice. As such, making students use higher order thinking skills, especially in the second language, is difficult and demanded by the UAE national agenda and UAE vision. And we, as educators, plan, instruct, and get students ready to use both languages with a focus on English as a language of instruction for the core subjects. Okay, so when I explored the linguistic aspects, and I found that the importance of, so I realized the importance of establishing a solid knowledge of Arabic phonology, syntax, and semantics for successful bilingual education. Students and teachers noted that students struggled across a range of linguistic aspects in Arabic, from sentence construction to text comprehension. They struggled also with linguistic aspects of English, not only Arabic. So maybe the case in Arabic is better than English. So the knowledge transferred between languages is especially important because of students' ability of using, skills or transfer skills from one language, or strategies, let's say, from one language to the other. However, of course, there are some consequences or a negative transfer, like transferring the complex Arabic sentence or sentence syntax or the syntax to English, or vice versa. So we can have some kind of negative transfer, but again, the solution is to explicitly state that especially for second language learners, we need to teach them strategies or explicit strategies. That's why grammar teaching in some schools, let's say, or some schools of thought, is important. So here we can say that students and teachers reported stronger linguistic abilities in Arabic than English, but agreed that students needed to improve both languages to the required grade level. And English phonology and syntax were problematic for students. Lower level proficiency with linguistic elements in English than Arabic, which led to poor academic performance due using English as a language of instruction. Insufficient biliteracy practices, let's say not event practices, due to linguistic difficulties, hinder achieving proficient reading and writing levels. Students' dependence on applying learned skills and strategies in English classes, they depended on transferring them to like Arabic classes. Arabic teachers had more positive impression and about their students' linguistic abilities than English teachers. So the use of many explicit strategies by Arabic and English teachers to teach the students were highly recommended. English teachers believe that students need scaffolding strategies due to the discrepancies in the instruction and the teaching and learning environment. Therefore, we can say that a new focus on Arabic as a first language in the early years is crucial, and there should be, excuse me, a gradual shift to second language use. And there should be a new transition to bilingual teachers from, or language use from first to a second language. A more structured approach to language instruction should be implemented to ensure UAE bilingual education success. And it would be helpful to consider using Arabic as the language of instruction for the core subjects, let's say till grade 4 or 5, or teaching the core subjects bilingually in both Arabic and English. And then we can do the exit to English language instruction. These revisions of current education programs could be established through strategies such as content-based language teaching, or by hiring bilingual educators in the early years who can teach science and math in Arabic or bilingually, and gradually transition to English. So the differences between Arabic and English can also be or can also generate new ways of English teaching in the Emirati context, and and consider English as a second language or a language of instruction, and facilitate bilingualism and biliteracy in this context. And it's crucial that these teaching practices to be supported by a clear bilingual education policy and system that provides explicit and sustainable instructions for educators, let's say sustained instructions for educators and teachers about how to implement bilingualism and biliteracy in the Emirati context. Okay, so as I mentioned, I explained that a new focus on the early years language instruction, and we need a more structured approach of language instruction, where focus on Arabic and the gradual transition to English. The application of the content-based language teaching is crucial, and thematic language teaching as well. Okay, so in this study, I focus on the cognitive and metacognitive aspects of bilingualism. And for this research, for example, in biliteracy practices and events, let's say students are expected to transfer literacy skills, such as reading and writing strategies between languages, especially between languages such as English and Spanish, closed languages. When bilingual children feel that they are challenged, and they tend to use strategies such as translanguaging, when they use the full span of their linguistics and semiotic and social resources to make sense of what they try to understand. Here, this leads us to the importance of establishing a good knowledge in either Arabic or English. We need children to use a language. Here, the focus is not on social identity or Emirati identity. Here, I'm discussing things from a cognitive perspective. So in order to enable children succeed and achieve We need to make sure that they are able to use a language and think through a language, and to use some strategies like translanguaging. Otherwise, uh, uh, strategy use will not be useful. So, background knowledge plays an essential role in augmenting the learner's linguistic skills. Actually, this research was guided by Cummins' linguistic and cognitive perspective in language development and dual use of the languages. The This paper explored the transition of language skills and the support primary education students receive to enhance cognitive abilities in Arabic context. Here in this study, I found out that the students reported difficulties in a second language, linguistics. Uh, they use their cognitive and metacognitive skills more freely in Arabic. They use their background knowledge more in Arabic classes, although it wasn't sufficient enough and depended on skills or strategies transferred between languages, especially in writing, instead of linguistic transfer, which is considered a positive transfer. There was some negative transfer, however, it was minor. I explained this previously, like the negative transfer of the sentence structure. The students use strategies such as, as I mentioned, the trans languages. And the idea here is to get students ready in one of the languages. And I think we are there since the focus is on the first language in the early years, while the transition to the second language and considering English as a language of instruction in later stages. Here, we need to consider to build on a child's previous knowledge and bilingually provide the children with concepts and vocabulary that we need them to use and develop. We need to enable specific or teach them specific strategies that enable transfer between languages and work within engaging environments. We need higher order thinking skills to be constructed, and we need solutions through process-based learning, inquiry-based learning, where language is a main focus, and implement STEAM or STREAM projects in schools. We need also to provide resources, human resources and materials, as I mentioned, in terms of bilingual educators and so. So here we need to provide immediate feedback for children, their parents, and policymakers. Immediate feedback requires immediate actions. We need also to make sure that children and their parents are aware of the importance of the exit, or the, let's say, the language proficiency level that enable children exit from cycle 1 to cycle 2, where tasks are very demanding, let's say cognitively demanding. From a socio-cultural perspective, here Dr. Najmuddin and I explored the integration of the dynamics, of socio-cultural aspects of bilingualism in the UAE. Researchers suggested that children's socio-cultural interactions go a long way in determining child's literacy development within the dual context of school and home, and whether the first language or second language is used. the main channel through which learning taking place in the in the interaction with other learners and teachers through activities that focus on shared interests and that offer learning opportunities for children with it. Let's start from here. Learning opportunities, going to events. Let's move to practices and gradually to events. These opportunities may also take place outside the classroom through extracurricular activities and within the domestic environment as well. And this should be considered and highlighted. The research draws heavily on the socio-cultural perspective proposed by Vygotsky. Of course, everyone is aware of him, and by which social interaction precedes the development of knowledge and the ability and, let's say, competences children need for their academic future. From this perspective, language is seen as a cultural tool here that enables our interaction while engaging in physical activities, developing oral language, and learning basics like reading and writing. I found that parents here are enthusiastic and they want to support their children, but they lack the real mechanism to translate this enthusiasm into practice. Again, here we need an explicit, clearly implemented parental involvement program. We don't mind cooperation and support we receive or we can receive from other institutions, but at the same time, standardization is important and implementation is important as well. In addition, also the findings revealed a lack of mechanism for continua of biliteracy. Where we need to sustain the practice. And this is suggested by Hornberger, which, the researcher here deals with the integration of cognitive, social perspectives and allowing students to view literacy as a continuum and to sustain the practice and mentally visualize the connection between different media, texts, communication, collaboration. All of this should be mentally visualized by children. So we need coherence and a typology of parental involvement. When I mention the word typology here, I believe in contextualized practices. And finally, the 3 research studies have resulted in detailed results and conclusions and implications directed to decision makers, curriculum assessment and pedagogy, let's say, and instructional strategies. Thank you, everyone, for being with me today, and thank you for listening. And I'm happy to answer your questions. And just I want to highlight that the main goal is to establish a sustainable practice in our education system, highlighting main areas such as linguistics, cognitive, metacognitive, and socio-cultural practices, whether in government or in private schools where children from different backgrounds come together and study in one classroom. Thank you very much.